All right, welcome on in everyone to this episode of First CSP, the channel dedicated to bringing you the first council shoulder patch issued from each council in Scouting America, both past and present. And we got a full episode for you today with Suffolk County 404 out of New York. The council was originally formed in 1919 as a name change from Pachoku, New York. I'm not sure. I'm definitely not pronouncing that correctly. And the council over time, as far as collecting guides, have tried to condense the variations of the first issue. There are 7 A through G that were originally identified. The most recent collecting guide, most of us use the International Scouting Collectors Association Guide 2023 Q3, which is what I use for most of the descriptions I read here on the channel. I will put a link to the International Scouting Collectors Association in the description for this video should you want to go check that out. I don't have any affiliation other than I am a member to be able to get access to that guide. I certainly recommend that collectors be members and support those putting in the hard work to try and produce collecting guides. But if we go back, so the current collecting guide 2023 Q3 has 4 variations, A, B, C, D, and that's a consolidation from the previous A through G. However, I don't think that the A through D current most recent guide does a good job of presenting all of the variations that are here. We have tried to collect A through G. I believe I have all of those correctly represented, although it is very difficult on identification within some of the patches. So let's head on over to the patch table. Let's start to take a look through these. We've got 7 to get through. This is the first issue, and actually probably one of the easier ones to identify because of the bird's wing is exceptionally unique when compared with the other issues. So here we have the S1A. It is a dull, light yellow border, blue vertical stitch background, yellow fleur-de-lis, 11 feathers in the wing. Again, none of the others look quite like this, so it is fairly distinctive. So within the 7 issues of variations of this first issue, there's kind of 2 categories. Whether or not the background is vertically stitched or horizontally stitched, and the length of this Long Island, New York. So there are 4 where the length of Long Island, New York is 49 millimeters. The first 2 are cloth backed, the next 2 are plastic backed, and then the rest, the Long Island, then moves to being 55 millimeters long. So that is kind of one of the keys to helping you break these down. So if we look at the measurement here on the first issue, we expect that this Long Island, New York should be 49. And it is, we see it comes right in before that 5, which would be 5 centimeters or 50 millimeters. So that is 49 for the length of Long Island, New York. If we look at the back, this is definitely a cloth back. So we have the S1A because Long Island is 49 millimeters long. We have 11 feathers and it's a cloth back. So those are the pieces you want to put together to identify the first issue here. Now the next in line is the S1B. It also is a cloth back. We now have what they call 6 feathers in the wing, and we are still dealing with a Long Island, New York that would be 49 millimeters in length. So again, we can break out our ruler here. We see that the Long Island, New York, again, going basically from essentially 0 to 50, so that 49. Again, remember the longer ones are going to be 55, so they're over that 5 mark. And if we look at the back here, again, this is also going to be a cloth back. We can put that up against the S1A. We can see the difference there in the wing, very distinctive. The first issue is the only one that's going to have all of the feathering here, what they're listing as 11 feathers in the wing. Sometimes I have a hard time counting that out. What I don't know for sure is if there are variations production variations on the first S1A where the whale has an eye. If we look at the alternative reference Gilwell First CSP website, which I can also put in the links for this, in addition to the Scout Collectors Association, their example of the first issue does not have an eye. You'll see a lot of the subsequent whales. It will have some indicator of an eye. Another thing that I look at when I'm trying to differentiate some of these issues, I look at where is the water line as directed by the waves around the whale. You can see that those are different and different production runs. You're going to see that the land and where it is on the beginning of Suffolk County changes, which also can kind of help you differentiate. Again, so these are the first two, S1A and S1B, that are both cloth back. And then we move into the variations that are still 49 millimeters for Long Island, New York, but they're now plastic backs. So next, we have the S1C. They do list this as being a bright yellow border. I don't find it to be super bright. And we are going to find that these now start to have a plastic coating on the back. You can kind of hear me tapping on there. So that is the S1C. They list it as thick white letters with a yellow fleur-de-lis. And then they list the S1D as just white letters. Again, all of these are vertically stitched backgrounds. The first four have the smaller Long Island, New York, and they are all vertically stitched backgrounds. So I'm going to sneak up here the S1D as well here at the bottom. So you can see very different water lines on the whale, which can kind of help in identifying. Again, this one also going to have a plastic back, which you can kind of hear me tapping on there. Neither one of these, the S1C is supposed to have a bright yellow border, and then the S1D has a yellow gold border. It's hard to see some variation there. They list the S1D as having a globular fleur-de-lis. They all kind of look like squashed fleur-de-lis for me on these. So there is a chance I might have these backwards, where this is the D and this is the C. I do know that they are all 49 millimeters for the Long Island, New York. And we can put that ruler back up there, and they are the plastic backs. So we do know for each of these, we've got that 49 millimeter Long Island, New York. So this would be at least representative of the S1C and S1D. Then we start moving into the horizontal stitch backgrounds, and those have the much longer 55 millimeter Long Island, New York. So the first of which is the S1E. This one's had a rough life. It looks a little dirty in person. But here we see the horizontal background. Now we can see that the Long Island, New York is well past the 5. So that is now going to be the 55. And all of these now have horizontal backgrounds. We've got 3 of these. And this one's had a little bit of a tougher life. It is also a plastic back on the S1E. So this one needs description. Horizontal stitch background. They listed as a 15 millimeter fleur-de-lis, green horizontal stitch island, 55 millimeters long. Again, I think that is a typo because I've never found one of these to have a horizontal stitched island. The next one we have is the F, which now looks like we start to go to more modern production methods. So this is a much cleaner stitch than we've seen on the previous patches. And the F is also horizontal stitch background, 55 millimeter Long Island, New York. It is also listed as a plastic back. Here, vertically stitched island. This is one of the super thin style plastic backs, but it is a plastic back. And again, my guesstimate here is this one ends up having to be an example of the S1E just because the description doesn't match the later S1F or G. And we also expected those were probably produced later. Last one here being the S1G. It is a little bit easier to identify as the last because the background, the backing is going to be the BSA plastic back. So that was maybe one of the easier to identify. Here again, you can just verify. This is now the 55 millimeter Long Island, New York. It's well past the 5 there. It was quite difficult to kind of sort out all of these potentials. Here, let me put the last 2 up here. So this is now F and G. As I said, the F started to look like more modern production, and obviously the G with the BSA plastic back is probably the most modern looking stitching. Again, those of you that are more familiar and longtime collectors kind of know how that has progressed over time. This one looks really sharp and clean. A lot of that sewing gets a lot more crisp as we get to more recent type patches and production. And that is, I believe, the full gamut of S1 Suffolk County patches. We can kind of for fun look at the very first versus the very last. So we started off with that vertical background with the smaller 49 millimeter Long Island, New York, and again the 11 feather wing. And then we end all the way at the end with G being a horizontal background and the most recent, obviously newest style plastic back. Would love to hear your thoughts for the longtime collectors that are regular viewers. Do you like how they've been trying to move the guides from basically finding every issue like it was here with this one all the way A through G? They've tried to condense it down A through D. I don't know that the A through D description where you're saying the range varies on, say, the color or background or whatnot, I don't know that that covers this well. I have another episode that will come back tomorrow where it's an example that they've condensed what used to be multiple variations down to a single listing, and I'd love to get your thoughts on that one as well. So come on back tomorrow to see that episode. Leave that as a bit of a tease. But yeah, give me your thoughts on how you think it's progressed with the identification for collecting and how that's continued to evolve. Do you like the trend that it's going and not having to be quite as specific, or do you think that that's a disservice to these individual patches? With that, I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. It certainly has been one of the more challenging ones to try and amass these together to be able to bring them to you. We hope you have enjoyed that. I've enjoyed kind of the hunt to track down all of these. And with that, again, we'll be back with another episode tomorrow. Thank you guys for tuning in and have a great rest of your day.